outside of the personage of Joseph, which is what we have been looking at last week we looked at Joseph. This week we're going to be looking at the historical aspect of it. Ran off and forgot my clicker. I have some slides this morning that kind of show some of this. Give me just a second. It's not there. Aha, there it is. All right, so we're going to be watching a video this morning that kind of explains this issue. So if you were to ask some historians, ask some archaeologists if there is historical evidence of the Exodus, many would say no. And really the issue with people saying no is that out of Exodus chapter 1 and verse 11, there is a statement that the Israelites helped build the store city of Ramesses. Well, Ramesses was part of the, let's see, where is it at? He's part of the 19th dynasty of later Egypt. And when you look in his time frame and the time frames after him, you do not find any events that match the Exodus. You don't really find a people group that really matches the Exodus. So what takes place in the video series, The Pattern of Evidence, is he goes through and he says, okay, but we have within the scriptures a pattern of events and certain elements that should be available in the archaeological record. Are we looking in the wrong place? And basically what his conclusion is, we're looking too late. Now the explanation for why the book of Exodus records the city of Ramesses is because a later scribe updated the location name to something that was more modern instead of using what was prior to. Think of a Bible translation today that would say in Turkey instead of saying in Ur of the Chaldees, right? That would identify the actual place on our maps today versus their maps back then. So basically, a lot of the confusion, at least according to the theory that they kind of put forward in this video, is saying we're looking in the wrong time because of a translation update that was supposed to help communicate to the people of that day where these events were taking place. So that's a lot of videos in a nutshell, and he's going to kind of go through some of the historical evidence of this. We're going to be watching this video on Right Now Media. This is basically like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus. It's a streaming platform with a variety of different media, right? Different videos. We have videos from major content creators like Francis Chan, Tony Evans, Max Lucado. Other groups like the Bible Project have their content on there as well. So there's a variety of materials for the adults. There's also a number of videos and TV series for the kids. So it's a great little streaming platform. Here's the cool thing. They don't go to individuals and say, hey, you want to sign up, let's get you a membership. They go to churches and they say, hey, if you will buy a subscription, everybody in your congregation can have access for free. We've done that. So this is part of the benefits of being a part of the congregation here, is we have access to this. So this is free to all. If you've gotten one of the handouts in the back, there's that QR code. All you have to do is scan that QR code and create your account. And it will automatically link it to our congregation as far as access to that. So it's a great tool, of course, just for streaming content and learning. It's a great aid for teachers to utilize this as curriculum or to learn themselves. It also has features that we're still learning how to use that allow us to give a group of people who are just joining online assignments, like watch this video, answer these questions, then when we get together we can discuss it more fully. So there's lots of different tools and aspects, and we're trying to utilize this tool a little bit better. So Right Now Media, free of charge to everybody. It's something that we all have access to. Even our Winter Texans, you don't have to be down here in the valley to use it. You can use it back home. It's not going to cost us more or less. We just pay a set amount and everybody has access to it. So if you use it, we're paying the same amount. If you don't use it, still using the same amount. So utilize this tool and this resource. There's great materials on there. When you get on there and you create your account, if you go up to the church, because you'll see the church's name at the top, it's one of the options. If you click on that, we have our top choices or top recommendations on that page. So we'll try to keep that up to date and all those sorts of things. All right, so we're going to watch the second of, I forget how many parts, of the pattern of evidence, the Exodus. This is going to be over Joseph and the coming two. So I've kind of already explained the first episode. You can go back and watch that for free on Right Now Media. But let's see if we can switch over to the Right Now player and see if this will work. So grab your popcorn.
The book of Genesis tells us that the first descendant of Abraham to arrive in Egypt was his great-grandson, Joseph, the son of Jacob. Joseph's brothers had sold him as a slave to a caravan of traders who brought him down to Egypt. Then, in an amazing turn of events, he rises to become the highest official in Egypt. He saves the country from a terrible famine, enables his father Jacob and his entire family to settle in the best part of the land, a place called Goshen.
My objective was to see if any specific evidence had been uncovered of the Semitic family group arriving in Egypt, as told in the Bible. So far, I had none.
So far, not. We only know we have some evidence of shepherds. So far, not.
I was stuck, but that was soon to change, when suddenly something was telling me to go to my library and search out a book given to me a year earlier that I had never read. What startled me was that this author had answers to the very doubts that Bitek had raised in me. He had spent his whole life exploring the Middle East, a man familiar with the mysterious inscriptions and hieroglyphs of the pharaohs, and what they might reveal about the biblical stories.
David Rohl, author, historian, and Egyptologist, is an agnostic, someone who remains unconvinced of the existence of God. Yet, he clearly sees archaeological evidence of the biblical Joseph, Jacob, and the early Hebrews in the Nile Delta region of Egypt. Rohl believes that many Egyptologists have missed evidence for the Exodus because they have been looking for it in the wrong time period. While most scholars think that the events of the Exodus happened in the New Kingdom, David Rohl's view would put the Exodus in an entirely different period, the earlier Middle Kingdom, where he claims evidence for the Exodus can be seen.
I wanted him to explain why he had come to such a different conclusion than Manfred Betek about Joseph and the early Israelites. Tell me, who is Manfred Betek?
Manfred Betek is probably one of the greatest archaeologists alive today, and he's dug at one of the most important sites in the Eastern Delta, a city called Avaris, which is in the land of Goshen, which the Bible calls it, and I believe this is the place where Joseph and his brethren lived.
Well, I went to see Manfred Betek.
Right.
And that's not what he said. He said there's no evidence of this at the time of Ramesses.
Exactly right. Most scholars will say if you look at the city of Ramesses, there are no Asiatics there. There are no Western Asiatics living in that particular city. But dig down a little bit deeper, and you do find a city full of Asiatics.
Yeah, but the Bible says it happened at the time of Ramesses. What are you saying?
I'm saying that this particular mention of the city of Ramses, the building of Ramses, is what we call an anachronism. It's something that's been added into the text later by an editor. So what the editor is basically saying is, this is the place where the Israelites built the store city, and we know it today as Ramesses. Well, in the ancient times, it was called Avaris.
Okay, so the people would know the area, the region.
The people of the Bible would have known where Ramesses was and where, therefore, their ancestors actually built the city.
I also found that the Bible, in the book of Genesis, uses the word Ramesses hundreds of years before Pharaoh Ramesses or his city existed to describe the land where Joseph's family settled. So if the name Ramesses in Genesis does not refer to the time of Pharaoh Ramesses II, then why should the mention of Ramesses in the book of Exodus be any different?
Now, this Avaris is the city which lies under the biblical Ramesses. Ramesses of the New Kingdom, Avaris of the Middle Kingdom, the 13th dynasty. It lies underneath the city that's mentioned in the Bible. So when Betek digs up a huge population of Semitic-speaking peoples with Semitic culture living in the city of Avaris for several hundred years, and then, at the end of the period, these Semites all leave, depart with their belongings and abandon the city, whatever Manfred says, that to me sounds awfully like the Israelites.
Well, what he told me was that there was no connection.
Well, look at the evidence that you've got here. Right at the beginning, at the heart of this community, at the end of the 12th dynasty, we see a Syrian house appear. The Austrians call them Mittelsaal houses. This type of house is found in North Syria, the area where Abraham came from. It's exactly the same style of house you'd expect Jacob to build for himself in Egypt. And we know that the Israelites sought their brides from Haran in that region. They all went back to get their brides from there. So the culture that turns up in Egypt at the end of the 12th dynasty seems to have come from North Syria originally.
So what is the connection with Joseph at Avaris?
Well, after this house of Jacob, if we can call it that, is built, eventually it's flattened, and on top of it, an Egyptian palace is constructed, Egyptian architecture this time. However, the occupant was not Egyptian. The palace had courtyards, colonnades, audience chambers. There was even a robing room. It obviously belonged to some high official of state who was very, very important to that state. Because when somebody gets a palace like this given to them, it means they're being honored for what they've done for the state. Now, in the garden behind the palace, the archaeologists found 12 main graves with memorial chapels on top of them.
You have 12
We
graves.
have 12 graves.
But why would that be significant?
Well, think about it. How many sons did Jacob have?
Yeah, 12.
How many tribes were there?
12 tribes.
Exactly. And what's also amazing is the palace had a facade, a portico with 12 pillars. So you've got 12 sons, 12 tribes, 12 pillars, and 12 tombs.
Interesting.
Yeah. Is that all coincidence? Now, one of these 12 graves was very special because it was a pyramid tomb. This in itself is extraordinary because only pharaohs and queens had pyramid tombs at this time. Yet the person buried in this tomb was not a king. Even so, he was honored with a king's burial. And inside the chapel of the tomb was a statue. What we know from the statue is that this man had red hair. He had pale yellow skin, which is how Egyptians depict northerners. He had a throw stick across his shoulder, a unique symbol of office made for this Asiatic official living in the land of Goshen. And on the back of his shoulder, we see the faintest remains of paint, colored stripes from a multicolored coat. And that matches exactly with the story of Joseph in the Bible. The multicolored coat is a gift which shows that he was the favorite of the father. And it almost becomes his insignia, this coat. It's the thing we remember about him most of all.
Do you know of any other statues of a Semite of this kind in Egypt?
There is nothing else like this in the whole of Egyptian history.
Really?
Nothing at all.
David Roll is not the only one to see a connection with Joseph at Avaris. Mahoney went to see Professor Charles Ayling, an Egyptologist who has also investigated the events of the Exodus and its connection to Egypt.
Would it be unusual for a tomb to have a statue?
No, it's unusual to have one this large. This would be probably twice the size of a normal human being.
What does that tell you when the statue's larger?
That it's a very important person. Now, of course, this is not a pharaoh's tomb or palace, but the man who lived there, you can identify his nationality by looking at the fragments of the statue. Three things: the hairstyle he has, which we often call the mushroom hairstyle, and then secondly, the weapon he carries over his shoulder called a throw stick, which we would associate with like an Australian boomerang, and then the coloration of the skin. The skin is yellow. All those things indicate that this would have been a Syro-Palestinian.
Dr. Ayling, do you think this is Joseph?
Either it is Joseph or it's somebody that has a career remarkably the same as Joseph did. It's just an incredible thing to find this at this time period.
The Exodus was a story about the birth of a nation. It was time for Mahoney to go to Israel. This gave him the unique opportunity to meet with Israel's president, Shimon Peres, and hear his perspective about the character of Joseph and his rise from slavery to governing Pharaoh's court.
If you look at the way the story is written, God chose him for a mission.
I read somewhere that Tolstoy said that this is the greatest story ever published in human literature. The story of Joseph and his brother and his going to Egypt. Joseph was the first Jewish advisor on earth. And he advised the most powerful empire in the vicinity. He conquered the heart of everybody he saw, men and women.
With God's help, Joseph was able to save Egypt by warning of a coming calamity. 7 years of plenty would be followed by 7 years of terrible famine. Pharaoh is so impressed that he puts Joseph in charge of preparing for the famine and makes him second in command over the entire country.
He managed to achieve this by foretelling or explaining the dreams of Pharaoh about cattle coming out of the water of the Nile. As first of all 7 fat cows, and then 7 lean cows come out and devour the fat cows. It's an extraordinary story, but the clue here is that these cows are coming out of the Nile. It's the Nile itself which is the cause of both the plenty and the famine.
If David's interpretation is right, then the regulation of the Nile may have been key in planning for the coming famine.
There's a canal or a waterway that connects the Nile to the Fayum Basin. This is a large lake area, which has the name Bahr Yosef, which means the waterway of Joseph. And this goes back thousands of years as far as we can tell.
Why do you think that canal has that name?
Because I think he made it. I think it was under his instructions as Vizier of Egypt that canal was cut. And it was cut to divert half the water from the Nile into the Fayum Basin. You then get back to the situation where the water levels are just right for growing crops.
Can you see it today?
It's still in use today. And the construction of this water diversion system is dated to the same period as the early settlement at Avaris.
Joseph gathers up all the grain during the 7 years of plenty in Egypt. He gathered as much as the sand of the sea. And then the famine comes to the entire region. And only Egypt has bread. So everyone comes to Joseph for what they need for survival. When their money runs out, they sold their animals. When that ran out, they sold their land, and eventually they sold themselves. So Pharaoh, by the end of the 7 years, owns everything in Egypt.
Mahoney wanted to know if there ever was a time in this era when a dramatic shift of wealth and power occurred between the people of Egypt and the Pharaoh. He went to Pennsylvania to see an archaeologist who spent many years studying the Exodus and the conquest. His name is Dr. Bryant Wood.
When we look at Egyptian history, we find something very significant happened at this exact time. Egypt was divided up into areas called nomes, kind of like districts all over the country. And the leaders of these nomes had tremendous wealth and tremendous power. We get to a point in Egyptian history when suddenly that all changes and all the wealth is concentrated with the Pharaoh. What on earth happened here? If you read the Egyptian history books, there is no explanation for it. They don't know what happened, how it happened. I mean, this was a tremendous social, economic change.
Well, what do you think happened?
Well, we have the answer in the Bible, and it's Joseph's famine policy, and he brings the wealth into Pharaoh, and it fits exactly with Egyptian history.
David believes these events occurred during the reigns of two important Middle Kingdom pharaohs.
This key time is during the co-regency between Senusret III and his son Amenemhat III. I believe this is the time of the famine, and that Amenemhat was Joseph's pharaoh. Amenemhat is depicted with worry lines. His ears are turned out so that he can listen to the concerns of the people. He's not depicted in the usual bland way that you see in all the other statues of past and future pharaohs. And I think this is an indication that in his time, Egypt was experiencing serious problems. And guess what? He builds his pyramid right next to Bahr Yosef, the waterway of Joseph.
The amount of archaeological evidence matching the first step of arrival in the biblical sequence seemed overwhelming to Mahoney. The Syrian-styled house that appeared in the Delta along with the palace fit for royalty, whose occupant was a high Semitic official from the Canaan area who wore a multicolored coat. The waterway of Joseph, contemporary with the rise of Avaris. The end of influence and wealth for the regional governors as the power of Pharaoh reached new heights. Yet these events converged at a time when the statues of the pharaohs were depicted in a unique, careworn way, the telltale signs of a kingdom in distress.
Well, why is it that we've never heard of these finds?
Because in the scheme that's used by scholars to date all these events, they're way too early. They're much too early to be Israelites. I'm basically saying, well, why not call a spade a spade?
At the pyramid tomb of Avaris, excavations revealed one other important piece of evidence.
The crucial clue for me, which says to me that this man with the multicolored coat is Joseph, is found in the story of Exodus. When Joseph is on his deathbed, he tells his brethren that when they leave, they must take his body with them to the promised land. What matches the story even more incredibly is that pyramid tomb was empty when the archaeologists found it. There was nothing in it at all apart from a few fragments of this smashed statue. There were no bones, there were no mummy beads, no coffin wood, nothing. It was cleaned out.
So it was a grave robber?
Not a grave robber. What grave robber is going to take the bones? Bones are intrinsically of no value whatsoever. Okay. Nobody takes the bones. Only people who are treating the body with reverence take the bones. The body was taken out, and all the grave goods were taken out. I think this is the tomb of Joseph, the pyramid tomb of Joseph, honored by Pharaoh with a colossal statue, that when Moses decided to take the people out of Egypt, he made sure he fulfilled that promise of Joseph to take the body out of the tomb and take it to Shechem and bury him in the promised land.
This location, photographed in the 1800s, is where many believe Joseph's bones were finally laid to rest in the ancient town of Shechem in Canaan. The city is known today as Nablus on the West Bank, where this tomb has been at the center of much political and religious tension.
The Exodus is surrounded by controversy on many levels. Even David Rohl suggesting specific evidence of Joseph and the early Israelites' arrival in Egypt is archaeologically controversial because he looks earlier in time than what is conventionally accepted. But at this stage, I didn't care. I was determined to stick with the guidelines of the investigation, looking for a pattern of evidence wherever it might exist.
Then David Rohl began to tell about the remarkable expansion that happened at Avaris, which fits the next step of the sequence, what the Bible describes as exceedingly great multiplication.
All right. Now, go ahead and pause that. So it's a great little series. Now, like with any series, any biblical teaching, whether you're sitting here in my class, regardless of what we're studying, you're listening to my sermons, or anybody else who is here at the congregation giving a sermon, or anywhere else online that you might be, use discernment, right? I'm not saying that for a matter of fact, these are the events, these are the remains of Joseph. It's pretty convincing.
So Joseph dies, and his brothers, and the entire generation.
Yes, we've gone over that. Yes, thank you, Captain Obvious. Right, so it's one of those things to use discernment on, right? So whether you're on YouTube researching this kind of stuff, or on Google looking up this stuff and trying to figure these things out, whether you are reading a commentary, or if you're on Right Now Media and you're looking at different classes and things, make sure you're using discernment. Not everything that is on these platforms, not everything that is said has the Ethan Harrison's stamp of approval. If you find anything that is majorly problematic theologically, let us know. We do have the ability to go in and to say this piece of curriculum or this piece of content is not in keeping with who we are, and since we're the ones who are paying the subscription and giving it out for free, we're able to actually take that off of the listing of like 10,000 videos that are available for consumption. And there is also teaching outlines and things that are here for the teachers as well. So there's a great abundance of resources here, but not everything is in keeping with what we believe to be biblically accurate. So do use discernment. Yes, sir.
You said only it's not a major theological issue, but is there any such thing as a minor theological issue?
That's where discernment comes in. And that is a challenge, right? We are not of the persuasion, and I see the wisdom for some, who will say go through their songbooks and start taking a Sharpie and marking out songs that we're not going to sing because we have a problem with a theological point that it's making, right? Not that there are not songs within the songbooks that we use that may have some issues, but we're not always one who goes through and tries to be that particular about it. So if you find something that you find problematic, let us know, and that's something that the leadership and I will talk about, and a decision will be made according to what we find and the discussion that's had. We're trying not to be too controlling on that, but we also don't want to lead people astray. There's a variety of teachers around Christianity today who are teaching a number of different things, and some of which might seem to a passerby as very minor, but I'm looking at some of the theological and practical applications of some of those things, and I'm finding them very damaging and very concerning for me. So, we're going to have some differencing of opinion on those things. But do use discernment. Ultimately go back to the scriptures. And one of the cool things about this Right Now Media platform is they have a Bible app built into the program that you should be able to access at least online, if not also from your TV as well. So there's a number of great resources and options that are within this platform for your consumption and your use. So we do want to encourage you to make use of it, but we also, of course, like always, want to encourage caution and wisdom in those things. It's always great to have things like this bolster our faith, to be able to point to a historical item, an archaeological item, and say, this backs up what we believe. That's always great. But ultimately, our faith doesn't rest upon this archaeological find or that archaeological find. Our faith rests upon the scriptures. But it is interesting to kind of think, okay, these guys are real people. They took place and they did their ministry in real time and space. What does that then mean? How did that impact the world? And to be able to see different things that might have happened is interesting and worthy of some time and attention. With that, we're going to end class on time, even if we started a little bit late. So if you have questions or comments, come and talk to me. And if you want to, you can watch. There's the rest of the pattern of evidence leading up to the Exodus. And then he does a series where he goes back and he looks at the writing, the development of writing and language, and how that would connect to Moses and to the scriptures. He goes forward and he looks at the crossing of the Red Sea and the finding of Mount Sinai. So he's got a number of videos. There's several hours of content that he's created looking at this time frame that is beneficial and interesting to look at, and requires a discernment because he lays out all the different perspectives. He is very much of one persuasion. I think that's clear in his storytelling. I tend to agree with him, but that doesn't make it the only way for it to be. Let's pray, and then you guys can come and talk to me about your perspectives as well. Father, I come before you today, and we thank you so much for all that you do. We thank you for your word. We thank you for the technology that allows us to learn and to study and to consider different options. We're thankful for all the scholars and the workers who are out there just digging up things and trying to understand what they're finding. Lord, we ask that you will help us to enjoy the discovery process, but ultimately, Lord, help us never to lose sight of the transformation of ourselves and the application of serving others and taking care of our community. We love you so much, Father. It's in your Son's name I ask and I pray. Amen.